Hello, everybody. There's Bengal volunteers, and today at 8 p.m. at 11 past 8, we are with you on a very special program called Rajaramon Roy, the Erudite Colossus. As you may know, Rajaramon Roy has been, to be precise, he is still with us, has been the pivotal figure of the Bengal Renaissance 19th century. According to many, had he not been there, there would not have been the generation of modern political consciousness among the Indians. While many understand, he was the father of the modern India. And to many others who are still left, I'm not talking of the communists, but who are still left to be discussed, he happens to be a multifaceted genius, a complete synthesis of dharma, tantra, and what's more, everything. To discuss on this special issue, we have a very special guest with us. And he is joining us from West Africa. He is Chandan Bandyopadhyay. Chandan is also a multifaceted personality. He's an educationist. He had his primary learning in the Sanskrit Torts Pathshalas and the revered gurus. And now he's a proficient businessman, educationist and businessman. That happens to be quite a unknown mixture among the Bengalis. We don't know that how can a person who is educationist and can be a businessman at the same time, and a prolific businessman, but Chandan has proved that it can be, and by the Bengalis. So here is he with us. Good evening, sir. Good evening to be in this show.
Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So before,
yes, go ahead.
Okay. There's a harsh sound from the back. I think, Sam, there is any problem in the transmission from Buddha? Might be. I don't know. Well,
what kind of noise is this?
There's a noise coming here. I do not know. Might be is it my fan? Just a minute.
I can hear it very well. I don't.
Just a minute.
Maybe somebody can confirm. If both of you are getting it, then maybe something is wrong with in my side.
Yes, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Sorry. So, Chandan, let's begin our discussion today. It's a very crucial discussion between us and of Rajaramon Roy.
Right.
Rajaramon Roy has been the pivotal pillar of the Bengal Renaissance. It's known to us. And had he not been there wouldn't have been any generation of English education in India, not to speak of modernism. So I would like to know from you, how does Rajaramon Roy inspire you?
Great. That's a great question. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do, before I get into that, and I will give a brief synopsis about Rajaramon Roy as to why we should care for him and who he was. Okay. So give me like a few minutes so that I can quickly go over with all some of the main points, and then we can get into the discussion. Okay? Mm-hmm. So first of all, what I'd like to say that look at the context. Look at the context that we are in 19th century beginning. Okay, 19th century beginning. Here we have the Hindu society has hundreds of thousands of wrong things happening. Then the British came, and the British, they're supposed trying to educate us, right? So in that context, if you look at it, it's the worst ever situation that India was facing. That's number one. Number two is the Western civilization is entering at a lightning speed, meaning they're educating us. They are like superior. They're a superior race. They speak English. They have science, and so on and so forth. Third, the missionaries. The missionaries are coming here to convert these heathens. So not only these heathens will go to the heaven, but also they will also go to the heaven. Now, the Muslims are still there, still powerful. We cannot ignore them. And overall, the Hindus are extremely weak. So that's the context we're talking here. So Rajaramon comes, So I'm going to go over with his first. He's a Sastri. So first, obviously, you know about his life story. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'm going to give you some of the more important aspects of his life. So first and foremost, he studied all the Hindu scriptures. He studied the Vedas, the Puranas, the Upanishads, of course, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so forth, and he became a scholar on Sanskrit. So he studied the whole thing about Hinduism. He not only did that, he also then learned Farsi and Arabic to learn Quran. He also then learned uh, Greek and Latin to study New Testament and the Hebrew to learn the Old Testament. So that means a man of that stature, he not only understood the Sanskrit and the Hindu theology, but also the Islamic and Christian theology. So that's number one. So that's what Rammohan was. So he became a Shastri, an expert, a scholar of all subjects, not just the Indian or but also the European and so on and so forth. Next. So it was Rammohan. He envisioned, again, there are a lot of controversies are there. People are talking about him, that, oh, he killed Sanskrit and so on and so forth. So we can get into that discussion later on. But to make one point clear, that he was the first person to envision in modern times Sanskrit as the national language, just so you know. Next is that he was the first person in modern time who revived Vedas and Upanishads for the masses. Okay. Now, just to give an example, our Ramcharitmanas was written in Awadhi. So, from, for example, I would rather say 300 AD onwards, Sanskrit was not a spoken language, and it came to a position where now people are writing in other languages like Bengali, Awadhi, and so on and so forth. So here he comes and he says that he brings back the Sanskrit treasures and gives it to us. Now, we all know that Swami Vivekananda, who went to Chicago 1893, and he gave a wonderful speech, and that sort of revived, or some people may think that that was the first time Vedanta was preached globally, but that was not the case. The first person who actually introduced Vedanta, Upanishads, Vedas to the West was none other than Rammohan Rai. And to the extent that the American, European intellectuals, scholars, they read and became so enthusiastic that they started even movements. I'll come to that later on. That using Rammohan's thoughts, Rammohan's ideals, they started, for example, transcendental movements in America, Thoreau, Emerson, and so forth. Okay. Then came. Now, one more thing I'd like to add here, that till he came, there wasn't any Hindu dharma as such. Now, I know this is a little controversial. Let me repeat. There wasn't such a thing called Hindu dharma. What? Hindus existed, the Vaishnavas existed, Saivas existed, and various sects existed, but Hindu as a dharma, Hinduism, it didn't exist. So it was Rammohan, the brilliant Rammohan. He brought all the sects together, and he created an umbrella called Hinduism or Hindu dharma. So it doesn't matter if you're Saivite, doesn't matter if you're a Vaishnavite, doesn't matter if you're Vedantist, doesn't matter if you're Tantric. So the credit goes to today's Hinduism, I would say 100% to Rammohan Rai. Then comes education aspect. People always criticize him, oh my God, this man, he basically westernized us. He brought the education system from Europe. But what he did was, you guys can hear me well, right? Hello?
Yes, hello, please continue.
Okay, sure. So the education system, what was happening, is very, very important to understand that. He saved us to a great extent. So on one hand, we have those tolls, okay? The tolls, patsalas, and so on and so forth, chatuspatis. On the other hand, now these missionaries and even the Hindus, they are now ready to start English medium schools. Guess what? 50 top Hindu scholars, Pandits, they made the British East India Company's that we want English education. So they're discussing. Then Rammohan came to Calcutta. Then he said, you know what? We need education, English education. We need Western science. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't become Westernized completely. So what he did, he said, okay, let's have a trilingual solution. Okay, trilingual solution. Number one, we need to learn English, modern science, mathematics. At the same time, we need to know our own languages. For example, Bengali, Hindi. Okay, and of course, let us not forget Sanskrit. So keep Sanskrit as well. So, for example, his Vedanta college or Hindu college, he followed that model. And now the question comes. Now, let's say, hypothetically, we have two options. One is Sanskrit tolls and one is English medium. Nobody speaks Sanskrit, right? So the parents of the students would send their children to where? Obviously, to English medium schools. That means we lose altogether our old traditions, including our mother tongue. And guess what? Bengali wasn't developed yet. Yeah, Bengali existed since 9th century. That's a different thing. But then to use that language in a prose way that didn't exist back then. So what Rammohan did, he created the proses. He popularized the Bengali language. Guess what? He was the first person to write in Hindi with Devanagari script. So you can also claim that he was the father of Hindi language with Devanagari script, in case you didn't know that. So he created the Hindi language with Devanagari script. He is now focusing on the prose forms of Bengali language so that we can learn in our own language. So therefore, he prevented the worst ever disaster of education, meaning that we did not become completely westernized English-speaking people. So, for example, if I go to Calcutta, if I went to Calcutta, we would be speaking in English. If Raja Rammohan wasn't there, okay. So that's another thing we need to keep in mind. We will elaborate later on in some other occasion. Then comes one of the most important things. Women were getting married at the age of 7, 8, right? 9. Oh, even 9 years old girl is at home. Oh my God, that's too bad. So Rammohan tried to stop those kind of nonsenses. And not only he did that, he said, you know what? Women need to go to school. Women need to study. So all women in India should keep his photos in their bedrooms. He probably did the most work for the Hindu women in India compared to anybody else. So that was Rammohan. That he said, like Vivekananda said, that you know a society to flourish, you need to have like a bird should have two wings. One is the men and women. That idea again comes from Rammohan Rai. He is the one who started the education for women. Now we know Rammohan only about Sati. And frankly speaking, I also, it was same for me. I only knew about Rammohan Sati. But that was a very small aspect. Important, very important, but small aspect. He also talked about polygamy. He was the one who first professed that, you know what, one man, one woman. And not from the Western perspective, from our Hindu Shastric perspective, he talked about that. Child marriages, he said, no, that should not happen. Widow marriage. Now, of course, we know Vidyasagar, he implemented that later on because, again, it was in his agenda. He was the one who first objected to that widows cannot stay at home. They should get married again. And as you know, Swami Vivekananda said once that the day we became exclusive or isolated from the rest of the world, we started going down. And it was Rammohan Rai who first opened it up, India, to the rest of the world, to give and take. For example, he crossed the Kalapani, as you know, first time. And he showed us that, you know what, it's okay to cross Kalapani. And when he went to England, excuse me, he followed the strict Hindu Shastric, codes and conducts for the food and everything. So again, that's another different subject that we can talk later on, what he did in England and how he influenced, the foreigners and so on and so forth. People say, well, you know what, he was an iconoclast and therefore he was an anti-Murti Pujari, all this type of blames we hear all the time. It's not true. He, in fact, defended Murti Puja when he was debating with the Christian missionaries. So that again, something again, we don't have much time, so I'm going to quickly, going through this main points. Till today, I don't know anyone who really studied Hebrew, Greek, and Latin to understand Christianity and Bible. It was Rammohan Rai. He went in deep to the Bible. For example, when a Christian missionary came to him, he said, "You know what? Can you translate Bible?" He said, "Sure, give me the copy." So he took the copy. Then he started reading, translating it to Bengali, and then in the middle he stopped. He said, this is the garbage." Then he went back to the missionaries. He said, "You know what? There is nothing special I find in your Bible for my people to read." And not only he didn't end there. Then he said that this concept of Trinity, like Father, Holy Son, and Ghost, all these things, it's nonsense. He also completely disagreed that Jesus was the Son of God. In fact, he said that, we can accept Jesus as a teacher, no problem, but we cannot accept him as a son of a God. So he basically discredited the core components of Christianity. It was him, the first and probably the last. I don't know anyone in the last 100 years or 150 years who learned these languages and went deep. Then come Islam. Same thing. Till today, I do not know, maybe I could be wrong, but I don't know any Indian who studied Arabic and Farsi to study by Quran and the life of Islam, life of Muhammad, and the Hadith. It was Rammohan the first who studied Arabic. Then he, he went to Patna to study Arabic and Farsi. So he knew Arabic so well. And in fact, to give an example, one Lebanese person came to India, an editor of, I think, Bengal Gazette. I don't remember the exact name. So then he started talking, because he's from Lebanon. So the language in Lebanon, as you know, is Arabic. So they're talking in Arabic so fluently that the guy, he thought that maybe Rammon's first language is Arabic. He was so fluent. Anyways, so he wrote this book called Tufat-u-Muhawuddin. In there, he completely dissected Quran, and he showed that this is not what a religious book. I'm sorry to say that. That's what the book talks about. And this book was meant not for ordinary people, it's for ulemas, so that they should know that what you are preaching is not really fruitful to the population. And for that, he got death threats, and he had to flee from Murshidabad. That time he was working in Murshidabad, so he came to Calcutta. Right? So again, Rammohan was the first person to analyze Quran thoroughly. Now, these days, we have all this Virat Hindutva people, big scholars. You see all the time they're writing, they know Hindutva so well. But guess what? It was Rammohan who was the first person to think about a Hindu nation. Okay? Rammohan coined the idea of superiority of Hinduism over all other world religions. He also introduced the notion of Hindu nation to counteract the strong national feelings of Christianity and Islam. His concept of Hindu nation was embedded in assigning Sanskrit the status of Hindu national language, and Sanskrit goes to the national ideology of Hinduism. Okay, that's Rammohan Rai. So we can legitimately say, he can legitimately claim that he was the first conceiver of the concept of Hindu nation. He is the first one who connected today's Hindu society, meaning back then Hindu society, to the Vedic past. As I said earlier, that before that, during Rammohan's time, we have many small groups. They're fighting. For example, I come from Navadvip region, as you know. So the Saktas are fighting with Vaishnavas, and Vaishnavas are fighting with Saktas. Then we have the Tantrics, they're outcasted, and it was a mess. Rammohan went into the Vedas. He went into the Vedas, he read. He said, I don't see any conflict. So he sees today what we are, we can connect through Sakta, we can connect to Vedas. Through Vaishnava, we can connect to the Vedas. To Tantra, we can connect to the Vedas. To Saivais, we can connect to the Vedas. So he is the first person who connected our Vedic past to modern time. That's very important to understand again. So, for example, today, when yesterday Modi ji was talking about Bharat Mata Ki Jai, right? Then we talk about Bande Mataram. Then we talk about many other these nationalistic things like Swadesh and so on and so forth. Again, it was Rammohan who inspired. For example, you know more than I do, perhaps, that the concept of this Hindu Mela, it was created by his followers, the Brahmos, the Brahmo Samajis. They created the, in 1857, now listen to this carefully, 1857 Sipahi mutiny. They're trying to bring back the Islamic rule, as many people say, right? So 1857, the mutiny was like held by majority of the Muslim small kings and landlords, and some Hindu kings. They're trying to bring back the Islamic rule. During that time, around 1860s, the Hindus in Calcutta, they are thinking that, you know what, we are going to rule. We Hindus are going to rule. And some of the people you know, Rishi Rajnarayan Bose, Devendranath Thakur, and so on and so forth. And from there, we see the concept of Bharat Mata coming up. Then Bankim Babu, he wrote his Bande Mataram. Again, this first ever to create the Bharat as a Mata was by Rabindranath Badar. You know the song, Aay re aay sabe Bharato Santan, Matri Rupe Kore Aobhan. That was again from the Brahmo Samaj. So it is again his movement, the movement he created. That's where we are getting all these ideas. Then comes the most important thing. Today we have RSS, Bharat Seva Samsung, Vedanta Mission, Ramakrishna Mission, and so forth. Again, it was him who gave us the idea of a Hindu organization in today's context. Okay, in today's context, we need to have Hindu organization. So, for example, if you look at these organizations, you'll find all these components. Number one, spirituality. You see Ramakrishna Mission, Bharat Seva Samsung, Arya Samaj, even RSS. You see that spirituality. Second thing is seva. Okay, that you got to help people. Not just talk about, Brahma, Upanishad, Vedas, but you got to go on the ground. You got to serve people. This idea of Jibe Prem Kore Jaijon Se which Ishwar, again, it came from Rammohan. He said that to serve humanity is the best way to serve God. Rammohan said at least 40 years or 50 years back. Third is the patriotism, that we cannot be just religious people, saints, talk about dharma, karma, reincarnation, but also we need to think about our motherland, which is India. Patriotism, again, this is Rammohan Rai. Fourth thing is that all those people, like the missionaries and others, later we became the socialists or the Derogians, to defend Hinduism. Again, that is an aspect is coming from Rammohan Rai. Then, for example, to take pride about our ancestral heritage of the rishis, this again comes from none other than Rammohan Rai. Then freedom movement. Now people say, he was a British stooge. He was siding with British, but that's all nonsense. First of all, he was the first person to envision the home rule. If you look at his biographies, the writing, that when he went to England and he talks about how India is going to become free India. Obviously, people are debating whether he should go American way or Canadian way. Again, we can discuss later on if you have time. Second thing is this, that he created those journals to propagate, Indian nationalism. He was criticizing the British, left and right. Okay, he was the first revolutionary during British era. Now under a different name, which again we can talk later on. So he revolted against British on a different name. Why different name? Because if he was caught, then he would be hung. So it's another aspect. Then all types of movements that you can think of in India, whether it's education, whether it is social upliftment, whether it's a constitutional agitation, all were started by Rammohan Rai. He was the first person, by the way, to calculate how much money East India Company is siphoning out back in those days. So, excuse me, if you look at all aspects, he can easily claim that he was the father of Mother India, unquestionably. And I don't see anybody of his caliber, not only in the last 250 or 300 years, but I in my opinion, that last, in recorded history, probably he was the greatest genius we have ever got. And to substantiate my claim, let me tell you why I'm saying that. There are two things. One, now it's very important to understand that when Shankaracharya came, we had a threat, the threat from Buddhism. But then people can say that, you know what, in the end, Buddhism was Indic, right? It was 100% Indic. So, well, even if we don't talk about Vedas and Upanishads, so what? Dharma was there, and Buddha himself talked about Sanatana Dharma. That's number one. Then we saw a lot of our great people like Shivaji and others that are fighting the Mughal and British. Yeah, they did a great job, phenomenal work. But then it was kind of content. And there are parts like Bengal, we didn't have Shivaji and some other people, but till British came, 50% people, are more than 50% people are still Hindus. And the reason we became Muslims, not because of the sword predominantly, it was there, but also the Sufi saints going to those villages and, and converting them with the sweet talk and music and so forth. So, but we resisted somehow. Still, overall, even in Bengal, Hindus were majority. Then British came, right? But then came British. When you have one hand, you have those Islamists, they're already there. Now the Christians, now they started converting. They have money. They can show their beautiful buildings, their dress, their education, and most important, the Western civilization. And the sociologists, so they're all coming, socialists are coming together. So Rammohan stood up. He said, you know what, stop right there. So, and that's the reason Swami Dvayananda Saraswati, Arya Samaj, again, was started to the inspiration of Rammohan Rai. Then, for example, Prarthana Samaj in Maharashtra, it is started with the inspiration of Rammohan Rai. Bankim Chandra, a few things I'd like to inform you. Number one, that he went to this Hindu school that was created, Hindu college that was created by Rammohan Rai. That's number one. Second thing, Bankim Chandra said that first we start feeling that superiority of Hinduism because of Rammohan Rai. He was a great fan of Rammohan Rai. And his political and economic ideas are reflected through his writings, even in novels of Rammohan Rai. In Bankim Chandra's writings. Of course, Vidyasagar, again, he was highly inspired by Rammohan. He focused on his feminist and humanistic aspect of Rammohan Rai. Then came Rabindranath Tagore. I mean, obviously, he wrote a lot about him, but just to give you a small idea about how grateful he was to him, he said it was Rammohan, he brought back the life of Hinduism. Rabindranath Tagore. He said if he wasn't there, it would have been disaster in India. The Western civilization and the Christian missionaries probably would have taken us over. You can read that. And so that was Rabindranath Tagore. And then comes Swami Vivekananda. Obviously, we are great fans of Vivekananda. Actually, I am a great fan of Vivekananda. As you know, I have done many events all over the world, especially North America, on Vivekananda. So Vivekananda said that he learned Vedanta and patriotism from Raja Rammohan Rai. Not only that, but he also said that I just followed the roadmap given by Raja Rammohan Rai. Okay? I mean, think about it. Vivekananda was a Brahmo in the beginning, right? He had a great interaction with Devendranath Tagore. So when he came back from Chicago, first thing he did was he went to Devendranath's house to, pay him the tribute because he learned all the things from him. And if you look at it, it may sound a little controversial, but I'd like to tell you anyways. You can, research it out. He was associated with the great Ramakrishna Paramahansa, who was a Kali Sadhak, Kali Pujari. But he never really did Kali Puja, neither he established any Kali Peeth or Kali Mandir. The only thing he did was Vedanta, which was again coming from Rammohan Rai. Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo, again, he is one of the greatest of our time, and he comes from, again, Brahmo family, as you know, he's a Brahmo. His grandfather was the great pillar of Brahmo Samaj, Rishi Rajnarayan Bose. whose father was friend and secretary of Rammohan Rai. Just to let you know that. So again, Sri Aurobindo said that Rammohan was the first genius. Rammohan was the first genius to transform our national life. It's a great friend of Rammohan. Okay. Then comes Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He said, Rammohan urged a return to the original principle of Vedantism. Therefore, many things he said in summary. He said that he's the dawn of the new awakening of India, and he was the prophet of new age. That was Subhash Chandra Bose. So if you look at it, that he was, I mean, even Gandhi, for example. Later on, Gandhi made some criticism, and that's a subject maybe we can discuss one to one. We have time. Gandhi also said that Rammohan was the father of higher studies on Hinduism. Okay, so Gandhi also gave him a tribute on that. Later on, of course, he criticized. And just to give you his another aspect of Rammohan, which I'm not sure that anybody till today have received among any Indians. He was a toast of London, Philadelphia, and Boston, a world-class statesman known to President Thomas Jefferson inner circle, President John Quincy Adams, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Schopenhauer, Jeremy Bentham, and the movers and shakers of American Europe. Can you imagine this? Rammohan was such a celebrity, such a big man, that the entire Europe and America, everybody knew him. So the back then, the professor of the president of Harvard University, he came from Boston, Cambridge rather, to London to invite him. And guess what he said? He said, "Sir, the entire America is waiting for you." That was Rammohan Rai. So, I mean, if you talk about the global revolutionaries, he was the mentor of the global revolutionaries, not just in India. For example, when Spain became free, you know what they did? They dedicated the constitution of Spain to Rammohan Rai. The Italians, the South Americans, and many other revolutionaries, they are all in touch with Rammohan Rai to get inspiration from. So he it's a very, very big person. And the last thing I'd like to say that before I stop, that Rammohan Rai actually helped starting the spiritual movement in America. What you see, America, open, liberal, whatever that is, it came from Rammohan Rai, for example, the Transcendental movement in Boston, New England area. They started after reading his books by Emerson, and then I think 1820s, Emerson read his book, and 1850s, Thoreau read his book.
Hello, Chandan, is there any problem? I think the connection has stopped. There's some problem in the connection, I hope. Unfortunately. Chandan, can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir? We should have to wait till he rejoin. There's some problem, I think. He has made a fantastic explanations and a revelation of many unknown facts that were not known to us have come forth. And we are highly indebted to him for all these revelations. But now we are going to start a discussion with him. There's some confusion in the connection. Well, let's wait for him. I'm going to wait and I will ask the others also to alert him. He's sure that he is going to come back very, very soon. Sam, can you take the liberty to contact Chandan? Or shall I contact him with the phone? Just a minute. Let me contact him now. Well, we're trying to contact him. Please have the patience. Please have the patience, please. It was a very fantastic discussion going on. Please have the patience. We are going to contact him. We are trying to contact him. He's in West Africa. Perhaps there's some problem in the connection and everything, but we are trying to connect him. Please wait. Please wait.
Yeah, when did you get disconnected? I cannot
Well,
hear you.
Chandan, I was just trying to call you. I was trying to call you with the phone. There was some problem with the communications, I think.
Right. Where did I stop?
Oh, you did, sir. I think that there is some problem in the communication. I can hear you loud, clearly.
Now, can you hear me
Is it,
now?
no. It's still there's a problem, I think.
What is Samrit though?
Yeah. So Buddha, please take care. Please talk to him, sir. Please take it. Please interfere. Some Buddha, please intervene. What's the problem then?
I can hear him perfectly.
You can hear him perfectly. Okay. Let him talk then. Let him talk then.
Yes.
Yes, Chananda, please go on. Yes, Chananda, please go on. Please continue. Please continue. What's the problem then?
Sir, you
No,
are
I can't
muted.
hear you. Can you hear Chandanda?
Sir,
Sambuddha?
you are muted.
Chanda, you are mute. Please ask him to unmute himself. Please ask him.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Please unmute. Please unmute. Unmute.
He is trying. That he is trying to tell.
So why don't you help him, please? If you can mute me, unmute me. You can unmute him also. I think.
No, I can't unmute him. Because he has unmuted himself, only he can unmute himself.
Good. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Further. Thank you.
Okay. So
I
how
think
far?
yeah.
You heard me.
Well, you were talking of the Spanish revolutionaries and everything, the Constitution of Spain.
Okay. Oh, pretty much 90% I covered, I guess.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. So I said that he was inspiring the revolutionaries from all over the world. As an example, that the Spanish revolutionaries, when Spain became free, they dedicated the Constitution of Spain to RAMMOHAN. So that's for an example. And then did you hear me? I talked about Rabindranath Tagore towards the end.
You started to talk of Tagore. You started to talk of Tagore.
Okay, okay, okay. So basically, Rabindranath said that the house we live in today is basically created by Rammohan Rai. He has so much respect for him that, and he called him his hero and role model and so forth. So, anyway, so let me stop right there. Let us have a question answer now.
Thank you, Chandanda, for the fantastic explanation and revelation of many unknown facts to us. Now, I would like to know from you. Well, Raja Rammohan did all these things, had the scholarly knowledge, made so much achievements in his whole life, had so much profound contributions on the Indian scenario, but he didn't go for the path of renunciation. He remained a grihast. That's a very striking feature, I think. In the centuries before him, there was a practice that the knowledgeable persons must go for sannyas. But he did make a break, I think. He didn't go for sannyas. He remained a greyhasta and did all the things that are necessary for the development of the nation. Number one. And number two, do you think that Raju Rammohan Rai, who had tried to imbibe a theory of get back to the basics, since it is written in the principles of Manu, Bhagavan Manu, that a girl till 14 years of her age, Kalyana Kanya Palaniya, should attain all the educations, but unfortunately, in the preceding centuries, the women were not given the education in India. And number three, do you think Hindu nationalism or Hindutva owes more to him than even Tilak, Savarkar, or the Bengal's nationalist movement? These three questions for you, sir.
Sure. The first one, I think those are excellent questions. Thanks for asking. Number one is that this idea of that only a sannyasi can learn Brahma Gyan didn't exist till Buddha. It is Buddha who brought back this idea. It existed. Maybe 1 or 2% population is to follow that. But then they would go to the forest and to do the tapasya dhan and so on and so forth to get moksha and whatever. So then Buddha started practicing that, and that became mainstream, meaning that you, in order for you to become Brahmagyani or to get nirvana or moksha, you have to be unmarried, you cannot be a family man. So till Shankaracharya, again, he was a great man. I don't want to make any comment on him, but suddenly he also followed the same format that, okay, you have to be a sannyasi and only then you can be enlightened. So it was Rammohan first, for the first time. He said, no, it's not needed. Look at all our rishis, whether it is a Vasishta, Vishwamitra, you name it, they all were married. Look at the Devs and Devtas, they're all married. So Rammohan was the first person to brought back this original idea that he can be grihasti, yet you can get Brahmogyan. So there was another thing was missing. And he corrected Shankaracharya, though he was a follower of Shankaracharya. That's number one. Second thing is about, I talked about this women education. And he gave many examples that during Vedic era or after Vedic era, women are going to schools and they're getting educated. So Rammohan was the first person to brought back women education. And he really spent a lot of effort on that. He fought with our good, Orthodox Pandits on that. And that's what I was telling you. I don't know if you heard me earlier, that every Hindu woman today should keep a photo of Rammohan Rai in their bedroom. Okay? I mean, education, discrimination, polygamy. I mean, everything to do with women. It was Rammohan Rai who tried to save women. I'm not saying he solved all the problems. Obviously not, because the society was so rigid. So it was Rammohan Rai who brought it back. Third thing, question you asked about the Hindu nationhood. As I said earlier, that the couple of things you have to understand, that to have a nation with spiritual religious ideas,
You have to first establish the superiority about that particular shastras. So what he did, now listen to this carefully. He first, and back in those time, we have Vaishnavas. I'm from Navadvip, as you know, that area. So we are fighting with the Shaktas, Saibites. So it was a mess. It was a complete mess. It was a complete mess. So he then went to the Vedas. He looked at it. He said, you know what? I can see connection with Vaishnavas, with Vedas. I can see Shaktas connection with Vedas. I can see connection with the Tantras. So then he created the first thing. He created this umbrella called Hinduism or Hindu Dharma. Okay? It didn't exist before that. This our good Hindutvawadis. They say, oh, he was a British stooge or he's a Christian missionary. But guess what? He's the one who gave us this concept of this Hindu unity. That we are all Hindus. That's number one. Number two is this, that he then started various Brahmo Samaj, for example. He created Brahmo Sabha and then became Brahmo Samaj, as you know. So what they were to discuss? They used to discuss, number one, of course, Upanishads and Vedas, and a little bit of Tantra, and Hindu nationalism, Indian nationalism. That Brahmo Samaj became the most powerful Hindu nationalistic movement. As we were discussing earlier, that Hindu Mela to start with, and so on and so forth. So then all the great people like Rajnarayan Bose, you talk about Swami Vivekananda, Rabindranath Tagore, Chittaranjan Das, every single person was influenced by him. Then Bharat Mata, concept of Bharat Mata ki Jai, that Modi ji was saying yesterday. Again, it comes from Brahmo Samaj. It is his people. Then to conceive India as a mother India, who did that first? It is his people. I think it was Rabindranath Tagore's elder brother. He wrote that song, that Aay Re Aasha Bharata Santan Matri Rupe Koriya Hoba. That is again from his movement. Then Swadesh. We talk about Swadesh. Now, who created this concept of Swadesh? It is in his Brahma Sangit. He first created Swadesh as something is important. So, yeah, that way you can see that, and he did not segregate, he did not compartmentalize, secularize, that, the religion is separate, state is separate. No. He combined them together, and he never ever used any foreign books. But he always used Manusmriti, as you said. He talked about, all the rishis, diktats. So basically, I think that he can legitimately claim he is the father of a Hindu nation. And he also said that, I think I gave you a quotation earlier, that a German scientist, he said that he was the first who thought of the superiority of Hinduism over Christianity and Islam. And he thought of a Hindu nation and having Sanskrit as the national language. So again, that was him.
So it can be said, as for what you have said, sir, it can certainly be said that he is the first political person with a modern outlook in India, number one. And number two, when he's trying to prove that Hinduism is above, is better than Christianity and Islam, I think there is a tint of imperialism within him, that he's trying to expand the Hinduism toward the entire globe. And number three, when he's talking with the British authorities in his own time, so it was not an age of rebellion, but he was trying to have a relation of competitive closeness. I think he was trying to set up a good relation with the British, but he was not yielding into them. He was also trying to confront them so that the Hinduism and the soul of India can develop and clash with the West in the coming years. Do you think so?
Exactly. I mean, the first and foremost, he said, all our good pundits from Calcutta, they said that, oh, you are attacking our Hindu dharma, not Hindu dharma, but our shastras and so forth. He said, no, my main mission to do this, whatever reform we're talking here, is to bring equality among Hindus, and eventually so that Hindus can claim political power. He made it emphatically clear on that. He said that my main mission is the Hindu needs to have political power. So in a sense, Savarkar, who talks about Hindu unity, in late 19th century or early 20th century. But Ram Mohan is talking about in 1820s that Hindus need to have political power. That's number one. Number two, he clearly stated that he did not accept Muslim rules as our Indian rule. It's very important. He said, he wrote a letter to British government. He said that we were ruled by these foreigners for 900 years. And we did not get our rights properly. So we hope now this time we're going to get our rights well. The second. Third thing is this. When he went to England, he said that, you know what, we are going to get freedom anyways. We understand, perhaps you're not ready yet, but let us talk about two possible ways you can get freedom. One is through American way, which is you fight, do revolution and kick them out. Second is a Canadian way, where we should work together, like Congress Party, for example, they're following Canadian way. So let us have this, we talk, we work with each other, and then eventually you hand over the power to us. That's number three. Then, for example, if you look at the Congress Party, now Congress Party was not all bad initially. So Congress Party was started by two great people. One was Ananda Mohan Basu. Again, he comes from Brahmo Samaj, and Surendranath Banerjee. So they followed Ram Mohan Roy. Even Surendranath Banerjee wrote once that, oh my God, we gave so much hard time to the greatest man ever. And today we're following every single thing he said. So the Congress Party is basically a product of Ram Mohan Roy. Then you talk about this revolutionary movement that we saw original Samiti and so on and so forth. You are expert on that. Again, these ideas, they come from Ram Mohan Roy. So if you look at it, that the entire freedom movement from that perspective is either way is credit should go to Ram Mohan Roy. You had something else you said, third point.
Well, then my question is, do you think that Kautilya revisited India once more through Ram Mohan? Do you think? Kautilya.
I'm sorry, what? Well, thank you. There was an article I was reading recently that the lady, as a professor from one of the universities from India, she mentioned that today's constitution written by or coordinated by Ambedkar, much of the contents are from Ram Mohan Roy. Whatever he envisioned, you see in our constitution. So yes, he was indeed the Kautilya modern time, and more than that. Because look, Kautilya was definitely a guru or a guide for Chandragupta Maurya, and he helped him to hash out many things. Okay, but he wasn't quite a Shastri, an expert to bring back the Vedas and so on and so forth. But don't forget, that time Buddhism was very much prominent. So Ram Mohan Roy, on one hand, he was a Kautilya. On the other hand, he was the Hindu revivalist or revivalist of the Vedas. On the other hand, he is the critic of all foreign contents like Christianity and Islam. So yeah, he was Kautilya and more than that.
Well, there's another thought that from 1867 to 1905, there had been a Hindu discourse in Bengal, unhindered, unrestrained, and relentless Hindu discourse for 38 years in Bengal from 1867 to 1905. So my question is, sir, how far do you think Raja Ram Mohan Roy influenced the context of masculine Hinduism that gave rise to the protest movements, to the cultivation of muscles as propounded by Vivekananda, followed by Anusha Shamit and others? Do you think how far did Ram Mohan Roy contribute to the saga of masculine Hinduism, the political context of Bengal?
Very good question. And to begin with, let me tell you something, that there was a time when some people in Calcutta, they tried to kill him. So then one of his friends said, oh, you have to be careful. There are people against you. He said, people are going to kill me? What do they eat that they're going to kill me? And supposedly he used to eat like whole one goat, at once. So he used to do, all kinds of exercises, physical, mental, spiritual exercises. So he is the first to talk about this, physical type of activities that percolated later on, as you can see through Brahmo Samaj, for example. You see that when the Hindu Mela people, they would sit together in front of the Mother Kali's murti, and they would have the blood, and then they would take the pratigya, the oath, that we're going to do this way and that way. Again, that was a revolutionary thing. It comes from Rammohan Rai. Rammohan Rai himself was revolutionary, which I posted an article other day, so you can see. So yes, and then obviously your Anushanal Samiti, which was started by Bandyopadhyay, Barin Ghosh, Arvind Ghosh, and even Rabindranath Tagore was part of that. Even C.R. Das was also part of that. Again, they're all Brahmo people. The inspiration is directly coming from Rammohan Rai. So yeah, so I think this revolutionary angle that if you're looking at, that had a lot to do with Rammohan Rai, because he did not believe in only one way of doing things, like Gandhiji talked about. And perhaps that was the main reason Gandhiji later on had certain, contradiction in his thoughts with Rammohan Rai. So if we can get into that later on, it's up to you. So yeah, to answer your question, it is yes.
Okay. So the last question from me today, sir.
Yes.
How do you find Raja Rammohan Roy in this modern context, the contemporary context of India in 2023?
Well, first of all, that we forgot Rammohan Rai. We don't even know. I spoke to many Swamis lately, last 1 or 2 years. I said, do you know Rammohan Rai? Oh, yeah, he was just a guy who did some swati and all this thing. That was it. So first and foremost, that we need to have a role model. We need to see somebody who can inspire us, okay? And not in one angle, but in multiple angles. So I think that Rammohan, perhaps that visionary, that role model that we can find in him, that can inspire people from all angles. People would like to have a so-called Hindutva, Hindu nation. People who like to be intellectually powerful, having reading the Shastras, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and so on and so forth. Again, that's Rammohan Rai. Why it's relevant today? Whether we need to further promote social equality. As you know, still there are people who claim that we are still not accepted by the mainstream society, the Dalits and so on and so forth. To uplift the status of the women. So in all angles, if you think about who was the person and who is the person we can look up to, it is Rammohan Rai. And also, there are people who are good, who are great in India. They have not seen the world. They have not read the global aspects. Again, Rammohan was the father of that. He read from Aristotle to Socrates, you name it. Quran, your Bible, everything is read by him. He interacted with the greatest of the greatest in Europe and America. For example, just to give you a small example, when he was giving a speech in London, so one of the editor-in-chiefs of a renowned newspaper, he was introducing Rammohan by stating that the kind of feeling I'm having, as if the Plato, Socrates, Shakespeare, of Newton is here. So he was compared with some of the greatest minds of Europe and America. That was him. So for us, we should be proud that he was the great Shastri, great Vedic scholar. So for us, we need to bring him back. We need to bring him back as soon as possible. And that's
so, sir. Okay, this is the final question from me, sir, today or tonight. Raja Rammohan Rai's own community, the Bengali Hindus at the moment, are not only staggering, they are facing an existential crisis now. Whether in Bangladesh or West Bengal and many parts of the area, they are in an abject existential crisis. How can we change the destiny or shape the destiny of this beleaguered community by following the principles of Raja Rammohan Rai? What should be done for them now? If we have to toe the lines of Raja Rammohan Rai.
You're talking about the entire Hindu community you're talking about, right?
So I'm talking about the Bengali Hindus in particular, sir.
Okay, Bengali community. So first of all, that that's an excellent question, because he was a scholar, right? So he As you know, his father side is from Vaishnava and their mother side is from Shakta tradition. Then he studied Vedanta and so forth. So he prescribed the best solution for the Hindus of modern time. So we have to be, number one, organized as Hindus. We have to be physical. Okay, we need to learn all kinds of exercises like you always talk about. We need to be well learned with our the darshanas, shastras, and most importantly, you have to create organizations. Now, I'd like to dwell into one interesting subject. Now, RSS again. I was a member of RSS and have a great respect for RSS. So, RSS is an organization that was created in 1925. Okay, based on I think instruction from Sri Aurobindo and Sister Nivedita and so on and so forth. Now that organization, they did excellent work. They are number one organization today. We can say that as far as the Hindus are concerned. But guess what? But that model has to be changed. The model, I think, is something we're still following what was relevant in 1925. So today we have to think about 21st century and we have to think about how we can proceed with neo-Hindu organizations, and perhaps we can get a lot of stuff from RAMMOHAN on that too. And only way to solve this problem is to have a strong Sanatani organization, organizational skill sets. Otherwise, I don't think we could go anywhere. When we are fighting with each other, we have like 200 groups, right? So I think RAMMOHAN probably can help us. I mean, not RAMMOHAN is no longer there, but his ideals and ideas can help us to come up with something relevant for 21st century.
A few questions have come up to you, so asking you, sir. I
Right.
think there is one question here that what about his letter to Lord Armors trying to proceed? Okay, there's a question stated that what about his letter to Lord Amherst trying to persuade him to get rid of Sanskrit education?
Well,
The same old
that's
story.
yeah. That's a very old story, and we talked about it a lot. First of all, that what he wanted. Now, the letter he wrote to Amherst. Now, you have to understand something. Now, people quote the one part. He said that today we need English because we are far behind from the Western world. So to catch up with the modern world, we need to learn English. Okay. So if you now let me tell you this line he wrote to Amherst. He said that if you're really interested to help Sanskrit, then give money to our tolls. We have thousands of tolls. Why you have to create a Sanskrit college? Okay, give it to them. And by the way, British did that in 1870s. They did that. So they listened to him, but after 45, 50 years. That's number one. Second thing is this: that in his Hindu college or Vedanta college structure, he kept Sanskrit. So he was never against Sanskrit. He just tried to write a letter to them, say, you know what, you guys have 1 lakh rupees or whatever the budget you have. Please help us with your modern science. We need food. We need bread and butter. Okay. So we know enough Sanskrit. That's number one. Number two, now think about this. British, as always, they are smart people. So they wanted to control these top pundits. So they wanted to create this Sanskrit college so that they can directly be involved with this, Hindus, their gurus and so forth. So it'll be easy for them to maneuver. So that was their goal. RAMMOHAN got that thing. He said, aha. So you basically want to bribe or take care of our top people, and then therefore you can control us. RAMMOHAN understood that. RAMMOHAN said, we don't need you. Back off. Just back up. Back off. We have our tolls in Navadvip and Tribeni and all over India. So he was, number one, not against Sanskrit. He was the one who first said that we'd like to have a Hindu nation with Sanskrit the national language. He's the one who kept Sanskrit as the main language in his Vedanta college and Hindu college. So he had nothing to do with it. Now, one more thing I'd like to add here. It's very funny. It's a very good question the gentleman asked. See, British started the first Sanskrit college in, I believe, in Banaras in 70s, 90s, 1790s, I think. Okay. Then when Rammohan wrote this letter, they didn't listen to him. They opened the Sanskrit college anyways. Guess what happened? That Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was the principal, as you know. So he regretted that students didn't come. So he did not have students, ample students for his college. Now, British, by the way, British also tried to revive Sanskrit. You have to give them a little bit of credit. For example, Mr. Jones, William Jones, as you know, was a judge who came here, and then he was the first person to study Sanskrit as a Westerner, and then he said the Sanskrit is a better language than Greek, Latin, and all the European languages, right? He started. So this Orientalism was started by British. So they tried to promote not just Sanskrit, but also Arabic and Farsi. But then, now this is the answer people should, you should give it to people, that British started press in Sanskrit. Okay, they started opening up press so that people can, have Sanskrit literature, books, magazines, and so forth. There were no takers. There were no takers. They said, "Boss, we don't need Sanskrit. We want, meaning those publishers, they're not at all interested because people don't care." So Rammohan, as a visionary, he knew the Sanskrit is not going to work out. We will bring back Sanskrit later on, but now let's talk about what is required today. Today is this: we are poor. We have no idea about this. This industrial revolution that's taking place in Europe, the scientific advancements of chemistry, physics, and engineering, and so on and so forth. So that's what Rammohan wanted to do, but he never was responsible, even 1%, to stop those tolls. Okay, and last comment I'd like to make, that even people blame Macaulay, right? Macaulay is a big evil, right? Guess what? The language all our freedom fighters spoke was English, and the British Prime Minister, Mr. What's his name? He blamed Macaulay for freeing India. He said, "You, Macaulay, you started this English language, English education, and all this Indian, freedom fighters and so forth, they came together because of English." So, answer number one, he had nothing to do with Sanskrit being forgotten. Sanskrit was not spoken since 200 AD. Okay, even for example, when Tulsidas was writing Ramcharitmanas, okay, the people said, "Don't write in Awadhi. We're not going to accept it." And guess who supported him to write him in Awadhi? He was a Bengali scholar, Mr. Some Goswami. He said, "Oh, we wrote it in Bengali. You should write it." Because the idea is not Sanskrit language. The idea is that people should be able to read those, our shastras and our books. So no, he has absolutely no connection whatsoever with influencing Sanskrit tolls to stop. And the last thing, sorry, I was reading an article that today in Bengal we still have some tolls, and they don't have students. So the tolls always existed, but what is the priority? What is the people's priority? I went to Patsala and that type of background. If I had an English medium school in my Katwa, Kanla area, probably I'd be going to English medium school. Let's be honest. Today, in Katwa, Kanla area, there are at least 15 English medium schools or more, maybe 30. What's going on today? Forget about Sanskrit. What about Bengali? Now people don't even care about Bengali anymore. They're all getting into English medium schools. Now, at that time, when British is there, they're giving jobs, security in all aspects. So people opt for English. But what Rammohan did, he made sure that we also put Bengali in there. Okay, we also put Sanskrit there too. So that was this contribution. So please tell anybody who talks about it that Rammohan was against Sanskrit. No, he was not against Sanskrit. He was a promoter of Sanskrit. In fact, he brought back the treasure of Sanskrit to us. Make sense?
It does make the finest sense, sir. And that brings us to the end of this fine discussion. We are extremely grateful to you, sir, for expanding your knowledge bank and enlighten our souls to let us know many ravishing documents, many ravishing truths that had remained unknown to us even in Bengal. Since unfortunately, we find that Raja Rammohan Roy, as present in Bengal, remains only in the picture frame. He's not in the discourses anymore. We have been languishing for the communism, Marxism left from the West for long and long years and for revolutions even. But unfortunately, we have not talked or we have not been methodical or meticulous to go through his papers. And that's the problem for our destiny today.
I'll let
Anything
you
more,
make
sir?
Two quick points.
Okay.
One is that you talked about communism, socialism. Guess who was the first person to challenge communism, socialism? Again, it's Rammohan Rai. When he went to England, then the socialism started propping up. So Rammohan debated with some of the scholars in England, and he completely defeated them. That this is a hocus pocus. Don't even talk about socialism. So he was the first Indian Hindu who challenged socialism, communism. That's number one. Second thing I'd like to request and to all of you that we are doing a series of events starting from July 9th on Bengal Renaissance. We're going to dedicate 2 sessions on Rammohan Rai. So first one in English, second one is in Bengali. So 9th, we are inviting one of the greatest scholars ever of Rammohan Rai, gentleman called Dr. Bruce Robertson. He did his PhD from Oxford in 1960 on Rammohan Rai. And his father was a Baptist missionary, and he himself was born in India, Uttar Pradesh. So then his father was fascinated with Rammohan Rai after reading it, and he gave up his missionary things. So anyways, that professor, scholar, Dr. Bruce Robertson will be speaking to us on 9th, and he wrote 3 books on Rammohan Rai, and perhaps, I read some of his books, perhaps he's the person who understood Rammohan extremely well. So I request you, I invite you all to attend this program on 9th with Mr. Bruce Robertson. And we'll also try to get another scholar, which I don't want to declare his name because since he's not confirmed yet.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us, sir. Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
then let's continue this talk, time to time.
Certainly.
We have to bring
Okay,
back
certainly.
Rammohan Rai. He's the need of the
Certainly,
hour.
sir. Certainly, sir. We shall be.